You think you understand the female mind. Think again. Even Freud, the man who mapped the depths of human psychology, admitted he was stumped by one fundamental question: what does a woman want? But here's the thing. Freud didn't ask this question because women are mysterious creatures from another planet. He asked it because he discovered something unsettling about how society has shaped the female unconscious, something that makes both men and women uncomfortable to this day. Today, we're diving deep into the psychological truths about women that Freud uncovered over a century ago. Truths that are still being ignored, denied, and misunderstood. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why so many women struggle with guilt around their desires, and why so many men completely miss the complexity of what's really going on in the female mind. Before we start, subscribe if you want to understand the human mind and explore what Freud really uncovered. Like, share, and hit the bell, because this content challenges conventional thinking. The great question that started everything. Let's start with that famous quote, the great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want? Now, most people think Freud was being dismissive or sexist, but dig deeper into his work and you'll find something completely different. Freud wasn't saying women are incomprehensible. He was saying that society has created such complex layers of repression around female desire that even women themselves don't know what they truly want. Think about it like this. Imagine you're wearing sunglasses so dark that you've forgotten what colors actually look like. That's what Freud saw happening to women in his time. And honestly, it's still happening today. Freud realized that to understand what a woman wants, you first have to understand what she's been taught not to want. And that's where things get really interesting. Truth 1, the ambivalence between desire and guilt. Here's the first uncomfortable truth Freud discovered. Women live in a constant psychological war between their authentic desires and the guilt they've been programmed to feel about having those desires. Let me give you a modern example. You know that woman who seems to have everything together: successful career, great relationship, strong friendships, but she constantly apologizes for taking up space. She says sorry when someone bumps into her. She downplays her achievements. She feels guilty for wanting more. Freud would say, that's not humility. That's psychological programming from childhood. Many women learn that their desires, whether sexual, professional, or personal, are somehow dangerous or selfish. It's like having a voice in your head that says good girls don't want that. Every time you feel a genuine impulse, this creates what Freud called ambivalence, simultaneously wanting something and feeling guilty for wanting it. It's psychological torture, really. Imagine being hungry but feeling ashamed every time you reach for food. Here's what's really messed up. This guilt doesn't just affect women. It affects everyone around them. When a woman can't access her authentic desires, she can't communicate them clearly. This leads to the whole women are complicated stereotype. But women aren't complicated. They're conflicted. There's a difference. The woman who says I'm fine when she's clearly not fine isn't being manipulative. She's been conditioned to believe that expressing her real feelings is selfish or problematic. So she represses them and then wonders why she feels empty or resentful. Truth 2, the mother complex, identification, and hidden rivalry. The second truth Freud uncovered is even more complex. Every woman carries an unconscious relationship with her mother that shapes how she sees herself and other women. Here's how it works. As a little girl, your first model of how to be a woman is your mother. You unconsciously absorb not just her behaviors, but her fears, her limitations, her relationship with her own desires. If your mother was afraid of her own power, you learn to be afraid of yours. If she sacrificed her dreams for the family, you might unconsciously believe that's what good women do. If she was competitive with other women, you inherit that competitiveness. But here's the twist. At the same time you're identifying with your mother, you're also unconsciously competing with her. Freud called this the electric complex, the female version of the Oedipus complex. This creates a psychological minefield. On one hand, you want to be like your mother identification. On the other hand, you want to be different, maybe even better than her rivalry. This internal conflict plays out in countless ways. The woman who can't succeed beyond what her mother achieved because it feels like betrayal. The woman who rebels against everything her mother represents, only to find herself becoming exactly like her. The woman who feels guilty for being happier or more successful than her mother. And here's what most people miss. This dynamic doesn't just affect the daughter's relationship with her mother. It affects how she relates to all women. That competitive feeling you sometimes get around other successful women, that tendency to judge other women harshly, that's often the mother complex in action. Freud understood that until a woman becomes conscious of this dynamic, she's not really living her own life. She's living in reaction to her mother's life. Truth 3. The repression of female aggression and autonomy. The third truth is perhaps the most controversial. Women have been systematically taught to repress their natural aggression and autonomy, and this repression is making them psychologically sick now. When I say aggression, I don't mean violence. I mean the healthy psychological drive to assert yourself, set boundaries, compete, take up space, and pursue what you want without apology. Think about how boys and girls are raised differently. Boys are encouraged to be assertive, competitive, to fight for what they want. Girls are taught to be nice, accommodating, to consider everyone else's feelings first. This creates what Freud would call a neurotic split. The aggressive, autonomous part of the female psyche gets pushed into the unconscious, but it doesn't disappear, it festers. Ever wonder why some women become passive-aggressive? Why they say yes when they mean no, then resent everyone for making them do things they didn't want to do? Why they have explosive outbursts that seem to come out of nowhere? It's repressed aggression finally finding a way out. Here's a modern example. The woman who's incredibly successful in her career but can't ask for a raise. She can advocate fiercely for her clients, her team, her company, but when it comes to advocating for herself, she freezes. That's the split between her capable, assertive professional self and the internalized voice that says good girls don't ask for more, or the woman who's incredibly nurturing and supportive to everyone in her life, but has a secret fantasy life full of scenarios where she tells everyone exactly what she thinks of them. That's not hypocrisy. That's psychological pressure building up from years of repressed authenticity. Freud believed that this repression of female aggression and autonomy isn't just harmful to women, it's harmful to society. When half the population can't fully access their power and assertiveness, everyone loses. Why men in society prefer not to see this? Now, here's the uncomfortable question. If these psychological truths about women are so obvious once you understand them, why do so many people, especially men, refuse to see them? Freud had a theory about this too. He believed that society has a vested interest in keeping women psychologically conflicted, because conflicted people are easier to control. Think about it. A woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to pursue it is a threat to systems that depend on her compliance. A woman who has integrated her aggression and autonomy isn't going to accept less than she deserves in relationships, career, or life. But there's another layer to this. Many men have been raised with their own psychological programming about women. They've been taught that women should be nurturing, accommodating, and not too demanding. When a woman steps outside these expectations, it triggers anxiety in men who haven't examined their own conditioning. This is why you see men who say they want a strong, independent woman, but then feel threatened when she actually demonstrates strength and independence. It's cognitive dissonance. They think they want one thing, but they've been unconsciously programmed to be comfortable with something else. There's also what Freud called idealization, putting women on a pedestal as pure, selfless, nurturing beings. This might seem positive, but it's actually another form of control. When you idealize someone, you're not seeing them as a complete human being with a full range of human emotions and desires. The Madonna whore complex is a perfect example of this. Some men can only see women as either pure and nurturing, but asexual or sexual, but somehow dirty or dangerous. They can't integrate the idea that a woman can be both sexual and good, both nurturing and autonomous, both loving and assertive. This psychological splitting doesn't just hurt women, it impoverishes men's relationships. When you can't see your partner as a complete human being, you can't have a truly intimate relationship with her. What happens when women become conscious? So what happens when a woman starts to become conscious of these psychological patterns? When she starts to understand her own programming and reclaim her repressed parts? Freud called this process individuation, becoming who you actually are, rather than who you've been conditioned to be. First, there's often a period of anger. When you realize how much of your authentic self you've been suppressing, it's natural to feel rage about all the opportunities you've missed, all the times you said yes when you meant no, all the ways you've made yourself smaller to make others comfortable. This anger phase scares a lot of people, especially men who are used to women being accommodating. But Freud understood that this anger is necessary. It's the psyche's way of reclaiming its power. Then comes what we might call reintegration, learning to express your authentic desires, setting healthy boundaries, accessing your natural assertiveness without guilt or apology. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or aggressive in a destructive way. It means becoming whole. It means being able to say no when you mean no, and yes when you mean yes. It means pursuing your goals without constantly worrying about whether you're being too much for other people. A woman who has done this psychological work is incredibly attractive, not just romantically, but as a friend, colleague, and human being. She's clear in her communication, authentic in her relationships, and powerful in her pursuits. She doesn't need to manipulate or be passive-aggressive because she can express her needs directly. But here's the thing, this transformation doesn't just benefit the woman, it benefits everyone around her. Men who are secure enough to handle a psychologically integrated woman often find that their relationships become deeper, more honest, and more satisfying. The Freudian solution, from object to subject. So what was Freud's solution to all this psychological complexity? He didn't offer a simple formula because he understood that psychological growth isn't simple. But he did offer a path, the movement from being an object in your own life to becoming the subject of your own story. What does this mean practically? First, it means developing what Freud called self-analysis, the ability to observe your own psychological patterns without judgment. When you catch yourself apologizing for things that aren't your fault, or feeling guilty for having desires, or saying yes when you mean no, that's the beginning of consciousness. Second, it means learning to listen to your unconscious. Freud believed that dreams, slips of the tongue, and unexpected emotional reactions are all messages from parts of yourself that have been repressed. That sudden flash of anger when someone interrupts you, that might be your repressed assertiveness, trying to speak up. Third, it means gradually expressing more of your authentic self, even when it feels scary. This might mean having difficult conversations, setting boundaries you never set before, or pursuing goals that feel selfish according to your old programming. The goal isn't to become selfish or aggressive. The goal is to become integrated, to have access to all parts of yourself, including the parts you've been taught to hide. Freud believed that this kind of psychological work doesn't just transform individuals, it transforms relationships and society. When women can be fully themselves, and when men can handle that authenticity, we get real intimacy instead of psychological games. Here's what Freud really understood. The mystery of what women want isn't a mystery at all once. You understand the psychological forces that have shaped female development. Women want the same thing men want, to be seen, understood, and accepted as complete human beings. They want to pursue their desires without guilt, express their needs without apology, and use their full range of human capabilities without fear. The reason this seems mysterious is because society has made it very difficult for women to know and express these basic human needs. But here's the hopeful part. Once you understand these psychological patterns, you can start to change them. Whether you're a woman working to reclaim your authentic self, or a man trying to understand the women in your life, awareness is the first step. The uncomfortable truths Freud revealed about the female unconscious aren't meant to create division between men and women. They're meant to create understanding and ultimately liberation. So, what did you think? Does this make sense? Have you recognized any of these patterns in your own life or relationships? Comment below. I read everything, and I'm curious about your experiences with these psychological dynamics. And if this helped you understand something new about the human mind, share it with someone who might benefit. Sometimes the most uncomfortable truths are the ones we most need to hear. What Freudian topic should I explore next? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.